This is the Cutting Edge on IRFM. You know, for weeks now we have been promising you this interview that we did with Ben Ammi. Ben Ammi is the spiritual leader for the Hebrew Israelites in Dimona, Israel. And for those of you who have been listening to us, we did visit there, me and Tony Rebel, in May. We visited Dimona, and we had this extensive interview with Ben Ammi. We're going to play this interview that we did in Israel. In Israel. We were there in Dimona, I think 2.5 months ago, me and my brethren, Lalibela. We were there talking to Ben Ammi. Ben Ammi is a spiritual leader for the African Hebrew Israelites in Israel. I think it's about 3,000 strong, who has developed a community, a self-reliance community in Israel. You have heard us talk to some of their members when they visit Jamaica. We have developed a relationship and we were there with them. We visited what they call the Holy Land, you know, all the holy places. Yes, Mount Zion, Galilee, Jordan, Dead Sea, and all these things. So you will hear Muta interviewing Ben Ammi, and I know that is enough internet. The pancake right now. You think it's joke? It's enough internet the pancake because this man is not a man who give out enough interviews. You understand? And when Muta can sit down for 2 hours and talk to Ben Ammi and make him tell you say he's a liar of Judah. It's a serious interview. When you hear Muta get that out of him to make him declare say he's a liar of Judah, you must know say it's a serious interview. So why to just sit in and listen to what this man has to say, that a lot of people in Israel see him as a Messiah. Yes. And not Messiah as the Western world teaches us, but a Messiah as given to the Judaism or the Hebrew way of thinking. You know, we have a different perspective of Messiah here. We think that Jesus is the only Messiah, but in the Hebrew thinking, that is not so. Yeah, a Mashiach is something to understand in the Hebrew way. So you will hear all about that. We want to present, as we say, an interview done in Israel this year in May. This interview was done by myself, and we interviewed Ben Ammi, anointed spiritual leader of the African Hebrew Israelites, right over there in Northeast Africa, Dimona. And I am here in Israel, in Dimona, with the elder of the African Hebrew Israelites, Ben Ammi. As you all know, we have been interviewing some of the brethren in Jamaica since last year, and they have been coming to Jamaica. Now we find ourselves in Israel. I want to give thanks for being here and give thanks for the opportunity to interview Ben Ammi. I want to say greetings to Ben Ammi, and it's really an honor to be here interviewing you in the place that is necessary, Israel.
Thank you. I'm honored to be able to provide this service and to be on this interview. And I would be remiss if I did not mention to the people of Jamaica, you know, the greatness of yourself as being a representative of our people there, and your dedication and your determination to try to bring redemption unto our people via the vehicle, the truth.
I want to give thanks. Now, this is a program that you might have heard about. You know, it's a Cutting Edge. And it's a program that we usually interview people, but because we are not that, what you call the journalistic type, our way might look very unorthodox or may very look out of place, but you have to see with us if it is kind of out of place, because we're just coming from, as ones in Jamaica, you know, man who is trying to just make the people understand things, so we don't have no specific way to ask things. This is just coming from us, how we do things. All right, the first thing we really want to find out about is, who is Ben Ammi?
Well, Ben Ammi means the son of my people. And in 1966, in the month of February, I had a vision. And the angel Gabriel came to bring the word of God that it was time to start the journey back to the promised land and to establish the long-awaited kingdom of God. And the year of the Exodus would be 1967. At that time, Muta, certainly being in a Christian environment, I pondered myself as many prophets before me, why me? And I considered that if, in fact, this was a vision from God, I thought that it was going to be a piece of cake. Certainly, I myself was to receive the worst whipping that I had ever received on this path. I listened and I pondered if I wanted to be ostracized, that I want to speak the words that the angel spoke unto me. I did not want to be incorrect. I did not want to mislead our people. But after much prayer and meditation, I did speak the words publicly before our people that 1967 would be the year of the Exodus. And as we recall, in the Americas at that time, after the words were spoken, we find that in 1966, the great riots began the length and breadth of America, because I wondered how was I to convince any significant number of our people to leave America in less than 1 year. But the riots came, and the riots assisted in creating the environment which would give the impetus for the Exodus in 1967. And in January of 1967, there was what was called the Great Snow. It was like the day the earth stood still. So with the help of Yah Yisrael, he created an environment which would give the impetus for the people to hear my message and, in fact, to cause me to succeed in leading our people out of America into the wilderness of Liberia in 1967. We sojourned there for approximately 2.5 years. And in March of 1970, we arrived in the Promised Land, and on the Day of Atonement, 1970, we declared the coming of the kingdom of God on this earth.
All right, three things happening here. You said you got a vision from Gabriel, and knowing that you said that you came up in a Christian environment. The first question is, as a Christian, how could you decipher that this was really a legitimate vision, and what form the vision took, and what were you doing at the time when this vision came to you?
Certainly at that time I was in the initial stages of sharing the truth with our people, but certainly we had been influenced by our environment, and I certainly did not expect any vision. I, like Ezekiel or Moses, I felt that if in fact the angel had a message, it had to be for someone else. Possibly he had the wrong address. But nevertheless, in understanding, that if in fact that this was the message of Yah, and I did speak the words, that it would certainly have to come to pass. But I was reluctant because of the Christian environment in which I was familiar with.
Mm-hmm. So the Christian environment caused the doubt, or is the doubt the reason?
It caused the doubt, because certainly that in the Christian religion, everything is centered around Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, that there can be no messenger, no redemptive message or anything, except that in fact that it would come through the imitative Eurocentric Jesus. Yeah. And that had somewhat bound me, wherein I did not feel that I or anyone else could become the anointed of the Most Holy. So we find that according to the Euro-Gentile plan, they have used Jesus and the whole imitative concept to prevent our people from ever accepting redemption or a redeemer.
So, all right, so you decided to make the trip by yourself, or like you work in an organization that you were speaking to like young people, and then you decided that you gather up these people and just went to Liberia, or did this, like in terms of finance, and did this was structured in an organization? Because as young people, I would assume that you was a very young person at the time. Mm-hmm. Young people don't just get up and just travel to Africa. They must have some backing, some financial pooling, You know, there must have been some organization, or maybe it was just a rich man, I don't know.
As a matter of fact, I was very poor, as a matter of fact. But I was part of the Beta Israel Hebrew Culture Center. Okay. There was an organized structure. There were no finances. All of this is part of the great miracle. And it gives us the assurance that, in fact, the Holy One of Israel has been involved in this redemptive struggle. In the beginning, it was actually an impossible journey. It was literally impossible. We would have to leave America in 1967. We had an outer perimeter of time to sojourn in Liberia of 3.5 years, and then to journey on to be in Israel before the Day of Atonement, 1970. We were entering into a country with an annual average income of $100. We were not allowed to take jobs. We had to move into the interior of Liberia. And as I said, without the minute details, that it was literally, Muta, an impossible journey. But as we look back now and we see how everything worked out, how the Holy One of Israel did assist in creating that environment. He did assist us in making the journey in Liberia. We were practically supposed to be stuck in Liberia. There was no practical way for us to get out. But we did sojourn there for approximately 2.5 years. And then we did find our way onto the Promised Land, Israel, in March of 1970.
How much was you talking about in Liberia?
2.5 years.
No, how much people?
We had approximately 400 individuals.
And how much went to Israel, came to Israel?
3/4 of them dropped out. Went back to America. Okay. Approximately 109 souls arrived total in Israel in 1970.
All right, so a group of black people now coming into Israel through the airport, that must have been something to see. Oh, I mean, because me and Tony just come through the airport, and it was like, you know, the Palestinians are coming out here. It's like, you know, it's just two Rastaman that enter Israel, and we went through such a search and antagonistic attitude. It's almost like there's an insecurity we see at the airport. Now, 100 odd people, black people, are come through the airport in Israel.
Right.
What is describe that.
Right.
In that time too, because that time must have been worse than this time.
Extraordinary. Extraordinary. And to throw kerosene on the fire, we had informed them that we were not coming here to be part of the mainstream Israeli society. We were, in fact, can you imagine, Muta, coming out of the ghettos of America, coming into Israel and say, we've come here to get things straightened out. We've come here not to be part of mainstream society, but we have come to, in fact, establish the long-awaited kingdom of God. So you can understand that we did have problems.
You're telling the Israelis this.
And telling the Israelis this, you know, that, in other words, with us, it was like, for us, it was like, unto them, it was the end of the imitative perception of Israelites. We proclaimed that we were descendants of the biblical Israelites. In fact, that we were returning home to our heritage.
This was in the airport.
This was in the airport and the days that followed. We were not accepted. That was not accepted. They tried to discourage us, certainly. They used the media to discourage others from following us here into the land also. And we waged almost a 25-year political struggle in Israel, very intense political struggle.
What about that with the airport, like the day that you land in the airport? So the 100 people in the airport, they're going through your papers, you know, trying to say, no, this can't work. You're telling them that you are a true Israelite. I mean, what is the perception here? I mean, there must be some phone call happening all over the place now, and everybody getting frantic. There's 100 odd people at the airport saying that them is a true Israelites and thing. I mean,
see, there again is the beauty of the fulfillment of the words of the prophets. Had we have entered into that airport in that manner directly from America, they would have deported us. But we had sojourned in Liberia. Okay. So they saw it as being a small number, actually only 109 individuals, and they felt that this was not part of any potential wave of others coming out of America. So this kind of gave them a level of comfort that, well, we're just talking about 109 individuals. Why should we take a chance on creating a storm in the midst of the African American population? So this is isolated. We will let them pass on through. But that's what happened. See, once we became settled in Israel, and our brothers and sisters begin to come directly from America. See, they recognized us. In the bottom line, they recognized us as Jews, Israelites, returning under the law, return initially. So, but what happened is that when the brothers and sisters began to come directly from America, they figured they had opened a Pandora's box by giving the possibility of 30 million blacks in America arriving at the gates of Israel and declaring that they were Jews returning under the law return.
They offered citizenship before, or that was something that came after?
Right. Before, we received recognition and citizenship initially as Jews returning under the law return, but those coming directly from America did not. In other words, that they all have to give support to the lies that they have created and they have manufactured and they have proliferated to the ends of this earth. And we will find that they're all confederate against truth, and they all are in harmony in order to prevent our people, redemption, from being proliferated in the midst of our people, and from the truth from ever gaining roots in the midst of our people. We receive all of the benefits, the political benefits, medical services, and ability to work, but it gives us more latitude to share our positions with the citizens of Israel, and that's more important with us, with the people of Israel, and also to our people to the ends of the earth. Prior to 1990, there's one very important aspect of that I did not articulate, and that is that we had all renounced our American citizenship. In the course of the struggle, in the redemptive struggle, for recognition here in Israel, all of us renounced our American citizenship because there were the threats of deportation. There were deportations. It was a very intensive struggle. And subsequently in 1990, in the course of the agreement, we had to receive documentation again in order to be registered even as temporary residents. They restored our American citizenship. They gave us documentation so that we could be registered as temporary residents at that time. So that gave us much more latitude, because that meant prior to that, that I was not out of Israel for 23 years. I was like on country arrest. I could not move to and fro. So according to the will of Yah Yisrael, that gave us great latitude. That meant that the sons could go in and out, I could move in and out, and we could begin to expand this doctrine. We could begin to hurl this doctrine more intensely in the midst of our people to the ends of the earth.
All right. So we'll talk about doctrine. Right? The doctrine. What is the doctrine?
The doctrine is, in fact, based upon truth, that our people must go back and revisit the Bible from Genesis to Malachi. The great deception that has been wrought in the midst of our people has them walking contrary to the will and the way of Yah Yisrael. You see, the cornerstone of Eurocentric theological institutions is that the Old Testament has been fulfilled. But the redemption and the strength of our people lies within the fact that we must go back to the words of the law and the inspired prophets of Israel. You cannot find redemption for our people reading the Bible from Matthew to Revelation. So let us consider how the conspiracy has worked. So then we take the Bible and we find Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Philip, Titus, Stephen, Paul. Now, when you hear all of these names, do you think African? Or do you think European?
Definitely.
You think European. So subsequently, when you read the Bible from Matthew to Revelation, you are automatically influenced to feel that these are European people. No one receives the impression of, or he conceptualized an African name, Paul or Philip or Titus. These are all Greco-Roman names. So subsequently, once they removed the access to the Old Testament and they allowed our people just to read the New Testament, they could bring them under the influence of feeling that the Israelites were in fact Europeans.
All right. So if you said from Genesis to Malachi. So what about Genesis to Revelation? It sounds like you're cutting off the Bible at Malachi and ruling out what they call Matthew to Revelation.
Right. Absolutely. You see, you can read the New Testament as you read any other book. See, we do not tell anyone, well, do not read a book written by Malcolm or etc. You can read them in search of good information, quotations, statistics, but it is not redemptive. For redemption of our people, the Bible from Genesis to Malachi is the redemptive source of strength for our people. So now what we must do is we go back to the words attributed to Yeshua. He said, search the scriptures. We must understand there was no New Testament for the first 300 years of what they call calling now, I think, for a misconception of what is called Christianity. There was no New Testament. That all of those individuals were simply messianic. They simply believed, there were those that believed that Yeshua was the Messiah and those that didn't believe that he was the Messiah. There was no Christianity in the midst of our people. There was no teaching of Christianity at that time in the midst of our people. They were all using the same Bible. They all had the same high holy days. They all were celebrating the same Sabbath day. It was only after Constantine declared Christianity to be the religion of Rome that they began to add all of the pagan customs and traditions into and to fashion what is now called Christianity. Christianity, contemporary Christianity, its origin is not the Holy Land. Its origin is in Rome. So now we go back. The words attributed to Yeshua, he said, search the scriptures. We find in the book of St. John, the 5th chapter, in the 39th verse, it says, search the scriptures, for in them you feel that you have everlasting life, for it is in them that it is written of me. Why did he make this statement? Because there were people questioning if he was not. And he was referring them back to what I call the mold. The prophets of Israel provide the mold for all anointed personages. If you do not fit that mold, then you are not anointed. You cannot be anointed. You must fit the prophetic mold. So he was simply saying that search the scriptures and see if I, in fact, fit the prophetic mold. Now, what were the scriptures at that time? There was no Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. He was telling them to search the scriptures, and the only scriptures at that time was the Bible from Genesis to Malachi.
So how do we attribute that saying to Yeshua when it is coming out of the New Testament?
See, but what they did is that they took an individual. Yeshua was an actual Hebrew personage, an anointed personage. And there was nothing mysterious about him. And they took many of the things from his life and his customs, and they fashioned an imitation of Yeshua, and they called him Jesus. So they took many of the things, many of the quotes from Yeshua, many of the things from his life, and they embellished these things with Greco-Roman doctrine to create a Greco-Roman Savior. You see, any people that are in the state of a rise or people that are in the state of demise, there's something that we must understand about the God aspect. No great anti-God civilization would find itself in a state of upliftment and he have a God that is not of him. I mean, it would be contrary to purpose. So with the rise of the European civilization, it also caused the rise of a European God. They fashioned a God in their image and in their likeness. And that's Jesus. But Yeshua was African Edenic. He was an African individual, and the ancient Israelites were African Edenic people.
All right. I'll come back to the Yeshua versus the Jesus, especially with the book that you have, because that is a book that we have been selling in Jamaica for years. This is even one of the things why I feel good to know that I could meet the author of the book, not even the Messiah, but the author of the book. It's very important. But we're going back to like Genesis, Malachi. All right, you talk about the authenticity of the book, but you relate to the mature, to Revelation as maybe fabrication. A lot of it is fabrication. How do we decipher? Is there any fabrication? Is there any Greek influence, as far as you can see, in Genesis to Malachi?
If you do not understand the Hebrew language, you will find some misinterpretations if you're going according to the Greco language interpretations of the Bible from Genesis to Malachi. It is for that reason that Yah Yisrael has provided Hebrew African Edenic scholars that can decipher those things and to give our people access to the truth as it was written by the ancient prophets. You see, that I would not advise our people to put their confidence in the translations of Euro-Gentiles. And it is for that reason that we're back here in the Holy Land at this time, that we are fluent in Hebrew, we can read the Hebrew scriptures, and we can decipher those hidden truths, and then to share them with our people. You see, we're not just teaching a doctrine, we're teaching what is called, in English we're speaking, but it is Hebraic thought. It is based upon the things that were not so much that were written, but the things that were meant, and the feelings and the similitudes of the hearts and the messages of the ancient prophets.
So you are saying that the Bible that the Western world has, because it is written in English, coming from a Greek translation, we get tricked. I mean, millions of people reading this thing in the West, and because they don't know Hebrew, they won't get a clear understanding of the Genesis to Malachi.
The Genesis to Malachi, the books were written in Hebrew, but from Matthew to Revelation, they were written in Greek.
Genesis, no, I know, but it was translated to Greek.
It was translated in the Septuagint, right, into Greek.
So I say,
not necessarily from Greek, it was translated to Greek, but also they translated the Hebrew into English.
Yeah, so you're saying now that to get a clear understanding of this book, you would have to know the Hebrew tongue. So the people in the West who is reading this English translation, are you saying that they might not get a clear understanding of what they are dealing with in terms of the salvation or the message that is supposed to be in the Hebrew version?
Absolutely. That is why it is written in the book of Isaiah in the 2nd chapter that in the last days that the law, Torah means Torah. It is built from the Hebrew Torah. It is built from the Hebrew Moreh. When you hear us use the term that Moses was the great lawgiver, in Hebrew it simply means he was the great teacher. He was the great instructor. But you can't come up with that understanding, you know, in the English language. But in the Hebrew, it's simply Moses was the great teacher. He was the great instructor. And from that we structure Torah, which is from Torah, or you shall instruct. So definitely, that is why the kingdom of Yah had to come. That is why there had to be anointed personages. And anointed personages are simply the authority, the teaching authority of Yah Yisrael on this earth. The teaching authority had to be removed from Rome, from Canterbury, from America, and it had to be returned to African Edenic people. Our people must know, and I don't say this from the vantage point of race, I say it from the vantage point of truth, that the Redeemer for our people, that he would have to be of African Edenic stock, that the redemption of our people will not come out of Rome, it will not come out of Canterbury, and it will not come out of America. It is for that reason that the Holy One of Israel has guided us back here and given us these skills and talents so that we can read the scriptures and to be certain that in this day and time our people are being exposed to truth, because as Yeshua said that you must know the truth and the truth will set you free.
All right. I'm hearing people listening to this now, and they're saying, is this man trying to say that my grandmother, who was reading this thing on her veranda before I born, and her grandmother reading this thing before I born, because she never know Hebrew language, she's now dead, and her grandmother dead, and they die with this lie in them, and still there's no redemption of their soul within the kingdom, not because of their problem, but because of a mistranslation that took place in the Bible. That is what the question would be.
It's not so much just a mistranslation, and it was a misconception. It was purposefully deception that was being proliferated in the midst of our people. We find in the last year, and certainly I know it has reached the press in Jamaica, that the Pope of Rome has said that there is no literal heaven and hell. So now where is grandmother, and grandfather, so now all of those, and first of all, I would ask them to deal with him. Go and challenge the Pope of Rome, because he is the one that promised. We never promised anyone that they were going to another heaven or another hell. You know, that is very deceptive. But the Pope, the Catholics, the Christians, the religionists have promised that you die and you go to heaven. You see, and again, that is deception. So we must go back now. Why have they continued to proliferate such a lie? Simply because from the beginning, Muta, that when Adam was created, he was placed on this earth in paradise. That's the only paradise that we were ever introduced to by God. We know of no other paradise. Subsequently, we see that hell is being proliferated all over this planet. The great struggle between the sons and daughters of light and the sons and daughters of darkness must take place on this earth. But our people now have been taught to leave things as they are on this earth, and you journey on to a paradise somewhere beyond the clouds. But that's a cop-out, that Yah does not need our people up in heaven. Everything is in order in heaven. The hell is being raised here on this earth. We must challenge the forces of evil on this earth and to return this earth back to its former state of being a paradise. So all of those things were lies. So we go back now and consider that we now are hurling the truth in the midst of our people. Where is heaven? Heaven is a high, elevated state of mind. And where is hell? It is an existence beneath the underworld, the lower world, in a state of existence without God. So now this is what we've always said, but the religionists